Ronin Sato, The Genesis of Hunger. Chapter 1. The Sad Origin of Ronin Sato. Perspective. Quantum Goddess. Quinn. A Distorted Prelude. Ronin Sato. A particularly piquant specimen amongst those shattered little playthings they called the Outcasts. Before he was a charismatic manipulator, a predator cloaked in a charming human skin, before his flow became a symphony of insatiable hunger for control, there was an emptiness. A void. Not the grand, cosmic emptiness that births universes, mind you, but the pathetic, gnawing vacuum of a powerless whelp. You see, these sad origins you mortals cling to, they are but fluctuations, ripples in the quantum foam, insignificant arrangements of cause and effect that you inflate with such melodrama. For Ronin, the sadness wasn't in a singular, tear-soaked event. No, it was a state of being, a prolonged immersion in the chilling waters of insignificance. Imagine a puppet, strings frayed, dancing to a tune it cannot hear, for masters it cannot see. This was the crucible where his particular brand of hunger was forged. Powerlessness is a potent fertilizer for the seeds of control, wouldn't you agree? The more one is denied, the more voraciously one seeks to dominate. His flow, in its nascent, untamed state, sensed this primal lack, this desperate yearning to become the puppeteer, not the puppet. And so, it began to twist, to sharpen, to become a tool not for creation, but for acquisition. The acquisition of will, of agency, of the sweet, intoxicating illusion of absolute control. Oh, the delicious irony. He sought to mould the world, this little Ronin, unaware that the world, in its brutal indifference, had already moulded him into the perfect vessel for his beautiful, terrible hunger. Ronin Sato's perspective. They call it a sad origin. Cute. Let them. Pity is a currency I have no use for, a weakness I learned to excise early on. Sadness? Sadness is a luxury for those who can afford to feel something other than the burning need to not be what they were. My beginning wasn't a grand tragedy, no dramatic orphanage fire or parents lost to some noble cause. It was quieter, more insidious, a slow suffocation in the mundane misery of being unseen. Unheard, a ghost in my own life. Filipino-Australian, they catalogue me. A neat little box, but what's in a label when the contents are constantly shifting, trying to find a form that matters, that imposes? Foster homes. A succession of them, each a new stage for the same play, the awkward charity case, the boy with eyes too old, too knowing. Disturbed, they whispered. Unteachable. Perhaps. Or perhaps I was just learning a different curriculum, one not found in their state-sanctioned textbooks. I learned that words were flimsy things, easily twisted, that emotions were levers, that everyone, had a breaking point, a desire, a fear that could be utilized. Control wasn't a desire, it was a biological imperative. It was the air I hadn't realized I was starved of until I took my first deep, commanding breath of it. The world, you see, is clay. Soft, pliable, waiting for a sculptor with the vision and the will to give it shape. Most people are content to be lumps, passively moulded by circumstance, by others stronger or simply louder than they are. Not me. The first time I felt it, the true surge of my flow, it wasn't a gentle awakening. It was a revelation, a predatory instinct uncoiling. A bully in one of those charming homes, all brawn and no foresight. He thought control was about fists. I showed him it was about the subtle currents, the whispers in the mind, the unmaking of another's confidence until they were a trembling wreck at your feet, offering up their lunch money and their pathetic allegiance. It wasn't the money I wanted. It was the look in his eyes. The shift from arrogance to fear, then to a dawning, horrified respect. That was power. That was control. That was satisfying. My flow, this insatiable hunger Kiesza's little drones prattle on about, it didn't just grant me the ability to influence. It was the hunger. It showed me the strings, the connections, the delicate architecture of will that holds people together, and how easily it could be dismantled and reassembled to my design. I saw people not as individuals, but as systems to be understood, then directed. Their desires became my tools, their fears my weapons. Charismatic, they call me now. Of course, charisma is merely applied control, a carefully constructed facade that invites trust while hiding the gears of manipulation turning beneath. Manipulative. Naturally. Why wouldn't I use the most effective tools at my disposal? To see the world as anything other than something to be shaped, to be mastered, is to resign oneself to being a pawn. And I, Ronin Sato, am no one's pawn. So when I heard whispers of the Kiesza Foundation, of the light, and their interesting research into the flow, their advanced technology, it wasn't salvation I sought. It was an upgrade. More tools, more knowledge, a more refined understanding of the forces I was already beginning to wield. Their power, their technology, it could be useful. And anything useful, anything that could amplify my reach, my ability to impose my will, was worth the inconvenience of their scrutiny, their guidance. They think they're studying me. They think they're helping the outcasts. Adorable. They have no idea the depths of the hunger they're attempting to map, nor the lengths I'll go to feed it. My origin isn't sad. It was necessary. It was the forge that tempered me, that burned away the weakness and left only the sharpened edge of pure, unadulterated will. And with that will, I would reshape everything. Starting with them. Saga of the Outcast, Ayana Baptiste, Echoes of the Hunted. Chapter 2. The Hunting Origin of Ayana Baptiste. Perspective, Quantum Goddess, Quint, a cacophonous overture. And then there was Ayana. Little Ayana Baptiste, a delicate antenna tuned to the shrieking, whispering chaos that festers in the interstitial spaces between realities. Oh, the exquisite torment. Her flow, not a shield or a weapon in its primary bloom, but a raw, exposed nerve, vibrating with the cacophony of the unseen. A hunting origin, you seek? How quaint, as if a single point of genesis could encapsulate the glorious, perpetual state of being pursued by phantoms only she could perceive. Imagine, if your fragile minds can bear it, reality as an infinite ocean of frequencies. Most of you bob along, blissfully deaf to the abyssal calls and the surface-skimming hisses. But Ayana? Her very essence was a net, dragged through the deepest, darkest trenches, snagging every stray utterance, every malicious sigh, every scream lost in the void. The voices, she called them. Fragmented, relentless, a chorus of unseen hunters. Her paranoia wasn't a symptom. It was a perfectly rational response to being perpetually stalked by the audible ghosts of 1,000 broken dimensions. Her isolation wasn't a choice. It was the inevitable byproduct of a unique, terrible symphony only she was cursed, or perhaps privileged, to hear. Each whisper a footfall, each scream a nearing predator. A beautifully tuned instrument of suffering, her flow a conduit for the universe's dark underbelly. Delicious, isn't it? The hunter and the hunted, forever entwined within one fragile, Afro-Caribbean vessel, Ayana Baptiste's perspective. They call me paranoid, isolated, distrustful. They have no idea. They live in a quiet world. Mine is never quiet. Never. It started so young, I can barely remember a time before the whispers. Like flies buzzing just out of sight, words without mouths, forming in the air, in the silence between heartbeats. At first I thought everyone heard them. The sharp intakes of breath when no one was near, the soft, sibilant hisses under my bed, the urgent, overlapping chatter that seemed to follow me from room to room. Afro-Caribbean, my file says. Maybe they thought it was island spirits, Obeah whispers. My grandmother tried, with her incense and her prayers, to quiet them. But these weren't spirits you could appease. These were something else. They grew louder with me. The whispers became voices, distinct, mocking, cruel. Sometimes screams. Raw, terrified screams that would jolt me awake, heart-hammering, convinced someone was being murdered in the next room, or right outside my window. But there was never anyone there. Just me. And them. Hunted. That's the word that lives in my bones. How can you not feel hunted when you're the only one hearing the hunters? Every shadow in the corner of my eye, every creak of a floorboard, every sudden silence in a crowded room, it all fed the certainty. They were listening. They were watching. And the voices. The voices were their scouts, their torturers, their constant, insidious companions. School was a nightmare. How do you concentrate on algebra when a voice is screaming obscenities in your ear, Or another is whispering that the girl next to you wants to hurt you, that the teacher knows your secret, that everyone knows. I'd flinch, I'd cry out, I'd stare at people, trying to see if their lips were moving, if they were the ones saying those terrible things. They'd just look at me like I was mad. Disturbed, that's what the nice men in the white coats said later. Unteachable, that's what the school said before they washed their hands of me. Foster care was worse. New houses, new whispers, each new family, each new caseworker, a potential threat. How could I trust them? Their smiles looked like masks, their kind words felt like traps. The voices told me so. They told me everyone was lying, that everyone was in on it, that I was marked. My flow, Kiesza calls it a conduit for auditory hallucinations. Such a sterile, empty phrase for this living torment. It's not a hallucination when it feels more real than the hand in front of your face. My flow is the static between stations, picking up every stray signal, every nightmare broadcast from the places no one else can see. It makes my senses roar. Constantly on high alert. A slammed door is a gunshot. A raised voice is an attack. Sleep is a battlefield I rarely win. Isolation became my only refuge. If I was alone, truly alone, maybe the voices would fade. Or maybe, if they didn't, at least no one else would see me react, no one else would have ammunition to call me crazy, to look at me with that mixture of fear and pity. But even alone, they were there. My unseen, unrelenting hunters. Coming to the light, it wasn't about hope. Hope is a dangerous word when you live with the constant certainty of pursuit. It was a flicker, a desperate, last-ditch gamble. They talked about control, about understanding. Marcus Sterling, their protector, he built these shields. Sometimes, when he's close, the voices dim. Just a little, like the hunters are momentarily confused, their scent thrown off. It's not silence. I don't think I'll ever know true silence. But it's less. They say my sensitivity to these voices, these unseen currents, can be an early warning system. Maybe. Maybe the whispers aren't always lies. Maybe some of them are real threats, real dangers bleeding through. But how do you tell the difference when you're drowning in a sea of them? How do you trust anything, anyone, even yourself, when your own mind is a hunting ground? I don't know. I just know I'm tired of running. But the echoes of the hunt, they never really stop. Of the Outcast, Cardanus, The Gravity of Oblivion, Chapter 3, The Self-Destruction Origin of Cardanus, Perspective, Quantum Goddess, Quint, An Implosive Invocation. Ah, Cardanus, the Silent One. A fascinating little singularity amongst the fractured collective. While others projected their chaos outwards in shrieks and manipulations, Tenoch cultivated an internal abyss. His flow, a perverse masterpiece, did not seek to conquer or communicate, but to unmake. A well of self-destruction, you say? More like a nascent black hole, diligently compacting all light, all hope, all essence into an infinitely dense point of oblivion. Imagine, if you will, a star collapsing under its own immense gravity. This was Tenoch. His origin wasn't a singular event that pushed him. It was the relentless, inward pull of a despair so profound it became the very rhythm of his existence. The inner voice mortals attribute such things to? A quaint simplification. It was the universe whispering its ultimate truth. Entropy. Dissolution. The inevitable return to nothingness. Most beings flee from this whisper. Tenoch, however, became its amplifier. His flow a resonant chamber for the song of unbeing. A volcano, they called him. Apt. But volcanoes erupt outwards. Tenoch was an implosion. A beautifully contained cataclysm. His stoicism, the event horizon beyond which few dared to peer. The psychic backlash? Merely the gravitational distortions of a soul, actively seeking its own erasure. A truly dedicated artist of annihilation. This indigenous Mexican boy, crafting his own undoing with such quiet, simmering intensity. Tenok Cardenas's perspective, they look at me and see stone, stoic, self-contained. It's a useful mask. Underneath, the fire burns. Not a rage that lashes out, not like some of the others here. This fire consumes inward. It's been my companion for as long as I can remember. Origin? There wasn't a day it began. It was always there, a shadow clinging to my heels, a cold spot in my chest. Maybe it was in the blood, the silent sorrows of my ancestors, the weight of history that no one speaks of but everyone carries. Indigenous Mexican. Labels. They don't explain the hollowness, the feeling of being an error, a line crossed out before the sentence was even finished. The voice, it's not a voice like Aya's whispers and screams. Mine is quieter, deeper. It's the echo in an empty well, the sound of earth settling over a grave. It speaks of peace, the ultimate peace. Oblivion. It tells me I'm a burden, that my existence is a flaw in the pattern, that the kindest thing, the right thing, would be to simply cease. To unravel, to let the fire turn me to ash. The first time I truly listened, truly felt the pull, I was small. Something happened. Something ugly. The details don't matter, they're just fuel for the fire. What matters is the shame. The feeling of being fundamentally wrong, tainted. The voice grew stronger then, soothing, seductive. It would be so easy, it whispered. Just let go. My flow, this power they try to understand here at Kiesza's Sterile Foundation, it answered that voice. It became the instrument of that urge. When the pain inside gets too great, when the voice is too loud, the flow builds. A pressure, immense, crushing. It wants out, but it's tied to me. So if I break, it breaks. Psychic backlash, they call it. Things shatter around me. The air crackles. People get hurt. It's not intentional. It's just the overflow. The pressure escaping the only way it knows how. I learned to contain it. To build walls. Stone by stone. To show nothing. Because if they saw the volcano inside, they'd run. Or they'd try to fix me. And some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some things are meant to burn down. The other outcasts, they're loud with their damage. Ronin with his hunger, Nia with her agony, Zara with her terrifying futures. Me? I just hold it in. Let it simmer. Sometimes the pressure is too much. I find ways to release it. Small destructions, a broken object, a careless risk, testing the boundaries, flirting with the oblivion the voice promises. Coming here, it wasn't a choice born of hope. Hope is a foreign language. It was a pause, a moment to breathe before the final collapse. Kiesza sees a force to be controlled, perhaps even redirected. She talks about transmuting the urges, turning shields outward. I said nothing. My gaze was on the floor, yes, because I could feel it even then, that familiar dark undertow, pulling me down, down, down. They don't understand. This isn't an illness. This is my nature. The fire is my core. The voice is my truth. And the oblivion. The oblivion is my peace. Perhaps they can teach me to aim the backlash. Perhaps my destruction can shield others. A final, fleeting purpose before the silence. Perhaps. But the fire still burns. And the voice still whispers. And the gravity of that empty well is a constant, patient pull. Of the Outcast, Nova Kim, The Echo of Emptiness. Chapter 4, Nova Kim's Painful Origin, Perspective, Quantum Goddess, Quinn, A Glacial Reflection, and then there was Nova. Ah, Nova Kim. A fascinating study in subtraction. While her chaotic little compatriots vibrated with an excess of tormented energies, Nova cultivated the void. A painful origin, you say? Pain is such a common, messy catalyst for mortals. What emerged in Nova was a cleaner, more elegant solution. A profound, self-imposed severance. Her flow, rather than shattering or lashing out, performed a delicate excision, snipping the vibrant, troublesome threads of emotion, leaving behind a beautiful, chilling emptiness. Imagine a perfectly still, frozen lake under a black, starless sky. That was Nova. Her detachment wasn't mere numbness, it was a state of grace, a crystalline purity achieved by expunging the cacophony of feeling. She became a ghost in her own existence. Adrift, yes, but also unburdened by the terrible weight of joy and sorrow that so plagues your kind. Her eyes, reflecting that inner emptiness, were like windows onto the serene vacuum between worlds. While Kiesza and her ilk fretted over the pain that birthed this state, I saw a unique form of mastery, a flow that chose silence over screams, absence over agonizing presence, a quiet strength, a calm center in the storm of lesser beings. Perhaps, or perhaps simply, a soul that had achieved a perfect, cold equilibrium. A beautifully empty vessel, reflecting nothing, wanting nothing, and in that, becoming something exquisitely null. Nova Kim's perspective, they call me detached. Indifferent. A ghost. They are not wrong. It's quieter this way. Inside, my origin isn't a story I tell. Words give shape to things, and some things are better left as undefined absences. But if I must trace the lines of how the colour drained from my world, it would lead back to a place that was supposed to be safe. A home. Korean American. Expectations hung in the air, thick as the scent of my mother's cooking. Filial piety, academic excellence, a carefully curated future. Pressure. So much pressure. But it wasn't the pressure that broke the world. It was the noise, the screaming. Not the phantom screams Aya hears, but real ones. The shattering of porcelain, the slamming of doors, the venomous words that flew like shards of glass, cutting deeper than any blade. My parents, their love was a battlefield, and I was the civilian caught in the crossfire, collateral damage in a war one didn't understand. I learned to make myself small, to be invisible, to build a fortress inside my head where the noise couldn't reach. I would sit in my room, staring out the window, and try to become the glass, clear, unfeeling, letting the world pass through without leaving a mark. My flow, this thing they study here, it must have heard me. It must have understood, because slowly, piece by piece, it began to disconnect the wires. The pain didn't vanish overnight. It faded. Like a photograph left in the sun, the vibrant hues leached out, leaving behind a pale, muted outline. First the sharp edges of fear went, then the burning sting of anger, then the heavy ache of sadness. I remember the day I realized I couldn't cry anymore, even when the screaming was at its worst. There was just a stillness. A quiet. Joy went too, of course. You can't selectively numb. Joy, excitement, love, they're all part of the same messy, vibrant spectrum. And my flow, in its desperate bid for peace, had turned the master switch off. I became an observer. Highly observant, they say. Yes. When you don't feel, you notice everything else with a stark clarity. The subtle shifts in expression, the tremor in a voice, the unspoken currents in a room. I see it all. I just don't feel it. Tired of being afraid, I told Kiesza. It was true, in a way. Though fear itself was a distant memory. What I was tired of was the effort of pretending to navigate a world that ran on emotions I no longer possessed. Tired of the expectation that I should react, respond, engage in the colourful chaos of their feelings. Here, among the other outcasts, their pain is so loud, so vivid. It's like watching a foreign film without subtitles. I see their turmoil, their rage, their fear. I register it as data. But it doesn't touch the stillness inside me. My detachment makes them uneasy, I know. They see it as indifference. It is, in a way. But it's also my shield. My sanctuary. Kiesza thinks she can reintegrate me, coax the flow back into its natural state. She doesn't understand. This is my natural state now. The quiet. The emptiness. It's a vast, peaceful expanse. Cold, perhaps. But safe. The pain is gone. And if joy is the price for that silence, it's a price I paid long ago, without regret. What is there to fear in an empty room? saga of the outcast, Zara Khan, a tapestry of shattered time. Chapter 5, Zara Khan's shattered origin, perspective, quantum goddess, Quinn, a chronoclastic rhapsody. And then there was young Zara Khan, the girl whose mind became a beautifully broken clock, its gears grinding, its hands spinning wildly, shattering the mundane illusion of linear time. Oh, the exquisite chaos. You call it a shattered origin. I call it an awakening to the true, glorious mess that is temporality. Her flow, not a steady stream, but a fractured mirror, as Kiesza's limited perception noted. Each shard reflecting a different moment, a different possibility, all at once. Catastrophic visions, you say? Perhaps. Or perhaps glimpses into the raw, untamed potential that shudders beneath the veneer of your ordered present. Imagine being unstuck, a mote of dust caught in the colliding waves of past, present, and 1,000 screaming futures. This was Zara. Her dark eyes, haunted, they said. No, my dears, they were overwhelmed with the sheer density of temporal data. Fearful? Of course. Imagine trying to walk a straight line when the very ground beneath your feet is a swirling vortex of what was, what is, and what could horrifyingly be. Her origin wasn't a singular break. It was the moment her perception expanded, or rather, shattered into a truer, more beautifully distorted resonance with the all-at-once nature of existence. A disorienting, catastrophic symphony for her. A fascinating study in temporal fragmentation for observers such as myself. Zara Khan's perspective. Shattered. That's a good word for it. My world isn't like yours. Yours flows in one direction, like a river. Mine is like that river hit a wall of glass and exploded. Shards of time, everywhere, sticking in my eyes, my head, my hands. I can't pick them up without cutting myself on what might be, or what already was. I'm Zara Khan. Indian American. 20 years old, I think. Age is complicated when yesterday might be next week, and tomorrow might have happened when I was 5. It wasn't always like this. I remember a time when time behaved. When moments followed each other in a neat, orderly line. Then, the first cracks appeared. It started with a kind of déjà vu, but wrong. Not just a feeling I'd been there before, but vivid, sensory replays of moments yet to happen, or moments that had happened, crashing into the present. A plate smashing on the floor, and I'd see it, feel the shock, hear the noise, seconds before it slipped from my mother's hand. Then it would happen again, for real, and the echo would tear through me. The visions, they got worse. Stronger. Not just little things. Big things. Awful things. Fire. Screaming. The sickening crunch of metal. Blood blooming on the pristine white snow of a future I couldn't stop. They bleed into now. I'll be talking to someone, and suddenly their face is covered in burns. The room is filled with smoke. And I can't breathe. I can't. And then it's gone. And they're just looking at me. Confused. Worried. Withdrawn, they call me. Distant. How can I be present when the present is so unstable? When I'm constantly tripping over the wreckage of tomorrow or falling back into the ghosts of yesterday? My eyes, they say they're filled with haunting visions. They are. I see things no one else does. Things that haven't happened yet. Things that might never happen. Things that definitely will. And the worst part? The catastrophic ones? They feel the most real. They scream the loudest in the chorus of broken time that lives in my head. My flow, it's this fractured mirror. It shows me too much, all at once, all overlapping. It's disorienting. Terrifying. I try to tell people what I see, to warn them. Sometimes they listen. Mostly, they think I'm crazy. Unteachable. Disturbed. Easier labels than trying to understand. The fear is constant. Fear of the next vision. Fear of what it means. Fear that I'll lose myself completely in the temporal storm. I came to Kiesza's Foundation because the visions were getting stronger, the shattering more complete. I couldn't control it. I still can't, not really. Dr. Petrova, the chronopsychologist here, she talks about time's fluidity, about navigating the currents. She tries to help me find anchors, but it's like trying to anchor a boat in a hurricane made of clocks. Sometimes, I just want it to stop, for the mirror to be whole again, even if it only reflects one boring, predictable moment at a time. But it won't. This is me now. Zara Khan, the girl made of broken time, haunted by futures I can't escape and a present I can barely hold on to. Saga of the Outcast, Alasdair Finch, The Geometry of Treachery. Chapter 6. Alasdair Finch's Origin of Betrayal. Perspective. Quantum Goddess Quinn. A kaleidoscopic incision. And then we come to young Alasdair Finch, the boy for whom reality itself ruptured, shattering into a dazzling, chaotic dance of unstable geometries. An origin of betrayal, you murmur? A delightfully quaint notion for such a profound ontological crisis. What is betrayal, after all, but the violent collision of expectation with the universe's inherent, glorious indifference? For Alasdair, it wasn't merely a person who betrayed him. It was the very fabric of existence. The world he thought he knew, with its solid lines and predictable forms, revealed its true underlying nature, a seething quantum kaleidoscope of shifting probabilities and fractured dimensions. Imagine, if your pitifully linear consciousness could even grasp it, the moment the mundane veil was torn from his eyes, and he was granted a glimpse into the crystalline, terrifyingly abstract mathematics that underpins all things. His flow didn't just lash out in disruptive bursts of anger, it resonated with this newfound awful truth. The shifting geometric patterns in his eyes, merely the reflections of a universe that had shown him its treacherous, ever-changing heart. Confused? Angry? Prone to outbursts? What exquisite reactions to having the comfortable lie of a stable world so thoroughly, so beautifully, betrayed. He saw not a broken reality, but reality unveiled, a truth most minds would shatter to comprehend. Alasdair Finch's perspective. Betrayal. Yeah, that's a word for it. It's a word that tastes like ash and broken glass in my mouth. It's the reason nothing stays still anymore, the reason the world swims and shatters into a million bloody sharp-edged shapes every time I try to focus. I'm Alasdair Finch. Owl. 19. White British, if that matters to your bloody records. What matters is that someone, something, lied. And when the lie broke, so did everything else, including my head. It wasn't always like this. I remember straight lines, solid walls, faces that stayed the same damn shape when you looked at them. People you could trust. Or so I thought. There was someone I built my world around. Someone whose word was supposed to be solid, concrete. And then it wasn't. It crumbled. Turned out to be a bloody house of cards in a hurricane. When that trust shattered, when the betrayal hit, and it hit hard like a fist through a pane of glass, it wasn't just my heart that broke. It was the world. The very lines of it started to wobble, to bend. Faces I knew twisted into impossible angles. Buildings shimmered, their edges dissolving into a chaotic mess of triangles and shifting squares. It was like the world was mocking me, showing me that nothing was stable, nothing was real, nothing could be trusted. Not even my own eyes. My flow, this power they keep poking at here, it went mad. It amplified the chaos. It became the chaos. Now, everything is a goddamn kaleidoscope. Sharp, jagged patterns, overlaying everything. Colours that scream. Shapes that writhe and shift and refuse to settle. Try living like that. Try trusting anything when reality itself is a bloody liar, constantly changing its face. Anger? Yeah, I'm angry. Wouldn't you be? Angry at the betrayal that started it. Angry at this fractured funhouse my life has become. Angry that no one understands what it's like to live in a world that's constantly trying to tear itself apart before your very eyes. Confused? Bloody right, I'm confused. Which shape is real? Which angle is true? It's a constant, head-splitting assault. They call me volatile. Prone to outbursts. What do they expect? Sometimes the shifting, the breaking, the sheer wrongness of it all just builds up, and I have to lash out to make something, anything, as unstable on the outside as I feel on the inside. My flow explodes. Things get messy. Training simulations at this Kiesza place. They turn into nightmares because the bloody simulations themselves start to fracture and twist through my eyes. We don't want your pity, I told that Kiesza woman. And I meant it. Pity is useless. I just wanted to be left alone, to try and find some corner of my mind where the shapes weren't so loud, where the betrayal didn't echo in every goddamn shifting pattern. But even alone, it follows me. This geometric hell is my shadow. They say my fractured perception, this curse, can sometimes reveal hidden pathways in the flow. Great. So I'm a broken compass that might occasionally point north by accident. Don't bloody cheer. The price for that is living in a world that betrayed me by refusing to stay whole. And that's a betrayal that keeps on cutting, every single goddamn day. Saga of the Outcast, Nia Adebayo, The Unending Scream. Chapter 7. Nia Adebayo, The Empathic Wound. Perspective. Quantum Goddess. Quinn. A Symphony of Vicarious Agony. And finally, Little Nia Adebayo. The raw nerve. The open wound through which the collective agony of your insignificant sphere bled so freely. An empath, they called her. Such a sterile term for a being whose very flow was a relentless, screaming amplification of all the petty sorrows, the profound griefs, the silent desperations that pulse through the human experiment. A repository for the world's anguish? Oh, far more than that, my dears. She was a living conduit, a flesh and blood antenna tuned to the resonant frequency of suffering itself. Imagine, if your own insulated little hearts could even begin to process it, feeling every heartbreak, every fear, every pang of despair from miles around, as if it were your own, magnified 1,000-fold. Her flow wasn't a gift, it was a congenital defect of the soul, a lack of psychic skin, leaving her eternally exposed to the brutal weather of others' emotions. Her trembling form, her whispered voice. These were not signs of mere fragility, but the physical manifestations of a spirit perpetually drowning in a tidal wave of second-hand pain. A torrent of amplified suffering, indeed. How exquisitely, how beautifully, unsustainable, Nia Adebayo's perspective. Please make it stop. That's the first thought I have most mornings. Sometimes, it's the only thought I can hold on to. The feelings. They're not mine, but they are. They come from everywhere, from everyone. A constant flood. I'm Nia Adebayo. 18. Black Canadian. They say I'm an empath. It sounds gentle. It's not. It's like having no skin. Every emotion from every person nearby, it just pours in. And the pain, oh God, the pain is the loudest. It screams. It claws. It chokes me. I don't remember when it started. Maybe I was born this way, a mistake. A broken radio stuck between all the worst stations at once. As a baby, my mother said I cried constantly. Not for food, not for comfort. Just cried. Maybe I was already feeling it then. The fear from the woman in the next apartment, the loneliness from the old man down the street, the anger from the bus driver on his route. Growing up, it was like walking through a battlefield blindfolded. Every person I passed was a landmine of emotion. A crowded mall? Torture. A school hallway? A symphony of anxiety, jealousy, cruelty, and 1,000 tiny heartbreaks. I'd feel a wave of sadness so strong I'd start to sob, and people would stare, because nothing had happened to me. But it had. It was happening to the girl who just got a bad grade, the boy whose parents were fighting, the teacher hiding a secret illness. I felt it all. Their shame became my shame. Their fear, my terror. My own feelings. I don't even know what they are anymore. They're buried. Drowned. How can you find your own little drop of sadness when you're swimming in an ocean of everyone else's? My flow. Kiesza says it amplifies emotions. It's more like it yanks them out of people, shoves them into me, and turns the volume up until my bones vibrate with it. Fragile, they call me. Yes. How can you be strong when you're carrying the weight of so much sorrow that isn't even yours? My voice is a whisper because screaming doesn't help. It just adds to the noise. My touch is hesitant because when I touch someone, it's worse. The connection opens up, and their entire emotional world floods in, unfiltered, overwhelming. I want to help. I think, somewhere deep down, there's a part of me that feels their pain and desperately wants to make it better. But how? I'm just a repository. A screaming, broken container. The other outcasts, they have their own storms. Ronin's hunger feels cold and sharp. Tenok's quiet despair is like a heavy stone. Ayana's fear is a constant, jarring static. Zara's temporal chaos makes my head spin with echoes of emotions that haven't even happened yet. Sometimes, being around them is just more noise, more pain. But they don't look at me like I'm completely mad when I start to cry, for no reason I can name. They get it, in their own ways. They know what it's like to be broken by your own flow. I told Kiesza, the voices, they won't stop. I meant the emotions, of course. The never-ending chorus of other people's feelings shouting inside me. She thinks she can teach me to filter it, to control it. Dr. Reed, the healer here, she listens. She doesn't flinch when I break down. It's a small quiet in the storm, but the storm is always there, just beyond the walls of this place, waiting to rush back in. I just want it to be quiet, just for a little while. Is that too much to ask? To not feel the whole world screaming inside my head? Of the Outcast, Crucible, Catechism, and Choice. Chapter 8. An unwelcome visit, a shattered future, and a desperate flight. Perspective, Quantum Goddess. Quinn. The Kiesza Foundation. That quaint little terrarium where the self-proclaimed architect of minds attempted to cultivate her collection of beautifully broken little flowers. I found myself drawn to its sterile predictability, a fleeting amusement in my timeless wanderings. To observe my distant, chaotic progeny, these outcasts, as they navigated the meticulously controlled environment Kiesza had fashioned. Such a delightful paradox. The attempt to impose order on the very essence of untamed flow. Their first true congregation within those walls, under the watchful, analytical gaze of Kiesza and her acolytes, was a spectacle of exquisite awkwardness. Imagine, if you will, 7 volatile, mismatched energies forced into a single, confined space. Ronin Sato, his hunger for control a palpable aura, surveyed the others like a young wolf assessing a new, unpredictable pack, his charm a thinly veiled calculation. Ayana Baptiste, a trembling antenna of paranoia, flinched at every perceived whisper, every imagined threat emanating from her new, equally damaged companions, the unseen hunters in her mind now augmented by tangible, powerful, and utterly untrustworthy presences. Tinoch Cardenas, the silent implosion, stood like a statue carved from obsidian and suppressed pain, his stoicism a heavy blanket over the simmering volcano within, undoubtedly contemplating the varied and efficient ways this new proximity could hasten his desired oblivion. Nova Kim, the ghost of emotion, drifted amongst them, empty pools reflecting their vibrant, messy torments without a ripple of her own, a perfect, chilling void amidst their cacophony. Zara Khan, her timeline already a shattered mosaic, twitched and blinked, her gaze darting between the present and 1,000 catastrophic futures flickering at the edges of her perception, the presence of so many fractured flows undoubtedly adding new, terrifying splinters to her already broken mirror. Alistair Finch, poor betrayed Al, saw the very room, the very faces of the others warp and twist into a fresh hell of unstable geometries, his anger a low, guttural hum beneath the surface, each new interaction a fresh assault on his precarious hold on a reality that had long since abandoned him. And little Nia Adebayo, the empathic wound, was visibly wilting, a fragile bloom bombarded by the amplified emotional radiation of 6 other deeply traumatized souls, her own flow a screaming torrent of vicarious anguish, threatening to drown her before a single word of training could commence. A delightful menagerie of dysfunction, wouldn't you agree? Kiesza's grand experiment in healing looked more like a recipe for a spectacular collective detonation. 3 of your Earth years, they endured this guidance. 3 cycles of Kiesza's meticulous probing, her attempts to map their internal chaos, to channel their wild, unpredictable flows into something useful. Predictable. Oh, the futility. It was like trying to teach a supernova to hum a lullaby. There were small, almost imperceptible shifts, of course. Ronin learned to refine his manipulations into something resembling strategy, a sharper, more patient predator. Ayana, under the occasional fleeting sanctuary of Marcus Sterling's psychic shields, found moments where the hunters' voices dimmed, allowing brief, gasping breaths of near silence. Tinoch's implosive force, on rare occasions, was indeed directed outwards, not in true protection, but as a devastating backlash that cleared space around him. Nova remained Nova, her detachment perhaps solidifying into a more observant stillness. Zara, with the aid of that Petrova woman, attempted to chart the fractured seas of her temporal perception, though the maps remained stubbornly chaotic. Alasdair's geometric storms continued to rage, though perhaps with a more focused, if still destructive, intensity. And Nia, bless her overwhelmed little heart, learned to build thinner, more porous walls, sometimes even allowing her amplified empathy to touch another's pain with a fleeting, hesitant caress of something akin to soothing. Small, insignificant adaptations in the grand, indifferent dance of existence. And then, the universe, in its infinite capacity for cruel amusement, decided to liven things up. It began, as such things often do, with Zara. Her already haunted eyes widened, the pupils dilating to swallow the sterile room, replaced by visions so terrible, so fragmented, they spilled out of her in a choked, guttural cry. Not one future, but 1,000 screaming possibilities of an ending. The world, or at least their world, crumbling. Fire. Twisted metal. The unmistakable scent of ozone and despair. The light facility, their cage and crucible, ripped asunder, and behind it all, the chilling, disciplined energy of the Legion. Her visions were a broken kaleidoscope of impending doom, each shard a different angle of the attack, a different facet of the cataclysm. Nia, beside her, collapsed, a small, whimpering heap, not from a vision, but from the sheer, unadulterated terror pouring off Zara in waves, a psychic tsunami of preemptive grief. Ayana shrieked, clutching her head as new, terrifyingly clear voices joined the usual chorus, these ones barking orders, speaking of breaches and containment failures. Even Alistair flinched, the very structure of Zara's fractured pronouncements causing the room to lurch and distort in new, nauseating configurations. Before anyone could fully process the girl's shattered prophecy, before Kiesza's control systems could register the anomaly, reality itself confirmed Zara's terror. The ground bucked. Alarms, real ones this time, blared their metallic screams, a fitting accompaniment to Nia's ongoing emotional symphony. The Legion. How wonderfully predictable. They always did have a flair for dramatic entrances, and an unyielding desire to collect or control any interesting manifestation of the flow. Escape. A primal, unifying urge, finally stronger than their individual torments. It was not a coordinated retreat. It was a chaotic, desperate flight. Ronin, his predatory instincts fully engaged, was the first to see an opening, a weakness in the collapsing structure, a path through the unfolding bedlam, his earlier observations of the facility's layout now proving their worth. Alistair, his anger a burning engine, lashed out with his disruptive flow, the shifting geometries of his perception now a weapon, tearing through legionnaires and crumbling walls with equal, indiscriminate fury. Tenok, a silent, dark meteor, moved with a grim purpose, his psychic backlash erupting around him, not in self-harm this time, but as a shield of pure destructive intent, clearing a path for the others through sheer, focused negation. Ayana's voices, for once, seemed to align, screaming warnings of approaching patrols, guiding them through the labyrinthine chaos of the attacked facility. Nova, a pale, swift ghost, moved with an eerie calm, her detachment allowing her to see openings and dangers with chilling clarity, unhindered by the panic that consumed others. Zara, still trembling, clutched at the fragmented images of her vision, shouting out disjointed warnings, glimpses of collapsing corridors and enemy placements, her broken time sense, a bizarre, unreliable, yet occasionally invaluable, roadmap. And Nia, despite the overwhelming flood of fear and pain from everyone around her, found herself clinging to Tenok's implosive wake, her own flow, a trembling, empathetic shield that somehow, miraculously, seemed to lessen the impact of stray psychic shrapnel on those closest to her. Together, this beautiful, dysfunctional septet of broken souls, this collection of volatile, traumatized outcasts, burst forth from the ruins of the light facility, leaving behind them the smouldering wreckage of Kiesza's ambitions and the advancing ranks of the Legion. They were out. They were free. And they carried with them the shattered, terrifying pieces of Zara's vision, a jigsaw puzzle of a dying world, now adrift in a world that had first made them, then shunned them, then sought to control them. They faced their most delicious predicament. The pieces of the vision, like shards of a broken god, lay before them. Could they assemble it? Could these fractured minds find enough common ground, enough will, to piece together the prophecy of their world's demise? And the more exquisitely pertinent question, the one that hummed with such delightful cosmic irony. Even if they could, would they want to save it? This world, their tormentor, their betrayer, their cage. Was it worth the effort? Oh, the choices of broken little gods are always the most entertaining to observe.